The movie centered around Ralphie, a dumb young man who recently started working as an Uber driver after getting fired from his job. Ralphie's life is far from perfect. In fact, it's quite the opposite. Binge eating, body image issues, and internalized homophobia are the least of his worries. Ralphie's paycheck can barely cover his needs, let alone that of his girlfriend and their unborn child. And let's not forget the fact that he might actually lose his job soon, considering how he's actually a terrible driver. One day, Ralphie's seen driving a breastfeeding woman who notices him sneaking a peek at her through the front mirror. She asks him to pull over and let her out right away. But Ralphie takes his time while staring pointedly at the toddler. As soon as the woman steps out of the car, she calls Ralphie a pervert and walks off. It's pretty obvious that Ralph has no chance at a 2-star rating at this point. Right after his less than exciting day at work, Ralph decides to uplift his mood by lifting weights at the gym. But even after lifting all those weights, he doesn't feel the least bit like a heavyweight champ. In fact, his mood only gets worse as he watches other alpha males with bigger muscle gains with a twinge of envy. After a grueling session, Ralph heads to the locker room while walking past a long line of half-naked and some butt-stark naked men trying to clean up. But seriously though, can't y'all do that in the comfort of your home or something? Anyways, guess where Ralph's next destination is? It's none other than a hidden mirror in the locker room, because nothing screams, "I got full control of my life," than a good, posed, muscle-bulging post-workout pic of a guy who just finished working out in a rusty old gym. Right after his less than reassuring moment at the gym, Ralph picks up Sal, his girlfriend, and drives her to the convenience store for new baby supplies, but not before taking jabs at her and her poor diet choices. "Yeah, right," says the guy who can't help but sneak a mouthful of bagels and chips into his mouth every minute he's alone. Sal explains that she didn't exactly have a better option before launching into a long rant about how toxic her workplace is.
Smile. Smile, you're not smiling enough. You're putting off the customers.
But rather than offer some words of support, Ralphie lashes out at her. "Go on, Ralphie. You just won yourself the award for the best boyfriend ever." It's pretty obvious that something's biting Ralph's unmentionables at this point. At the supermarket, Ralph casts one longing glance at the gay couple at the store attendant's front before steering his wife in the opposite direction. Ralph eventually shares a moment of happiness with Sal while they discuss the best products to buy for the baby.
What does this do?
It gets the milk out.
No. Seriously?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
really? So fucking gross.
But they get the shock of their lives after the store attendant gives them the bill. Baby supplies cost over $200? Even baby Goliath didn't spend that much on toy spears. Sal and Ralph are forced to return some of the items, which earns them a glare from the store attendant. But even Sal's cheerful advice about offering every service with a smile doesn't change her mind. Later that week, Ralph returns to the gym to let off some steam. He notices Ahmet, another gym goer who looks like a Greek god, and they keep exchanging glances while working out. The sexual tension between them is through the roof, but of course, Ralph heads back home to his beautiful girlfriend. They do what couples do with little enthusiasm, and they're forced to stop right in the middle of it. Sal apologizes for it, but deep down, Ralphie knows he's the one at fault. Sal opens up to Ralph about her meeting with the doctor and how he requested that she take some tests. Ralph groans about this while remarking on how expensive tests are. Sal eventually opens up about her worries on parenthood and how she had cried at the doctor's office. She wonders if they're actually ready for this parenthood thing, considering how they couldn't even pay the bills. Sal asks Ralph if he still wants to go through with this, but he says nothing as she turns off the light before allowing him to fall asleep while listening to their baby's heartbeat. The following day, Ralph's friend Jason convinces him to meet with some new friends he made. Apparently, there's some stinkingly rich guys who help out broke guys like them. For real? Hook me up, Jason. And Jason wastes no time in doing that. Ralphie makes quite the impression on the leader of the group, a self-help men's rights activist named Dan. But this isn't your average self-help group for men. Dan calls himself Dad Dan and encourages celibacy while basically running a dude cult of guys who've left their partners, some without explaining or giving an excuse for leaving. But Ralph doesn't realize what he's getting himself into. Jason encourages Ralph to tell the guys about his miserable life. So he tells him about his girlfriend, his new son that's on the way, and how he recently got fired from his job. Ralph has no idea why he's doing this, but on the bright side, at least he's got a free serving of steak coming his way. Ralph finishes his speech by saying he's just trying to keep an open mind and stay positive. While the men toast to this, we notice a mark on the hands of all the men at the table aside from Jason and his friend. And it's pretty obvious from this moment that these men are not as ordinary as they seem. Right after the meeting ends, Ralph heads towards his car to binge on some donuts. But he gets the shock of his life when Dad Dan approaches him to give him some uplifting words and let him know that if he ever needs a hand, he isn't on his own.
No offense, but what the fuck does that mean?
Later during the week, Ralph resumes his job as Mr. Grumpy Pants as he scolds Sal about going through his stuff. She asks him to try to be a bit more festive since Christmas is just around the corner, but he simply lashes out at her.
What do you want? You just want me to throw all that shit out? There's good stuff in there.
Yeah, I don't want you messing around back there.
Oh, Jesus, Ralph.
I thought I remember saying it. Didn't I say it?
Ralph visits the gym later that week to let off some steam. After taking a cold shower in the male bathroom, he heads out without giving a second glance to his newfound gym crush, Ahmet. While Ralph takes his clothes out of his locker, Jason walks over to him and gives him a gift from the guys, a new pair of sneakers.
Oh, that's what I'm talking about.
Apparently, he'd made quite the impression on the guys. Later that week, Ralph decides to visit Dad Dan and his little cult again since they're the only bright side to his life. During Ralph's first official meeting with the guys, they all introduce themselves as sons, except Dan, of course, who introduces himself as their daddy, the top G. The men then fill Ralph in on how they've been celibate.
Son Aaron, a year, 4 months celibate.
Dad Leo here, just over 6 years and still trucking.
Going on 10 years. 3 years celibate.
With some stating they'd stayed celibate for as long as 12 years. Yikes. Ralph has an awkward moment while introducing himself to the group because he's not exactly sure if 3 days would count considering how he and his girlfriend were still going strong even with her being pregnant and all. After the group meeting, Ralph wanders around the house for a while before stealing an apple and eventually rummaging through Dad Dan's locker. This guy just can't stop, can he?
Oh, he cannot.
While Ralph is busy practicing with a gun he found in Dad Dan's desk, Dad Dan walks up to him and talks about how vulnerable Ralph is. Ralph asks him what he means, and Dan explains that Ralph often leaves his back open to any attack from his passengers whenever he's driving his Uber. He walks closer to Ralph, who panics and tries to move away, but Dan tells him to take a deep breath and relax. He also asks Ralph to confide in him about how he's feeling, which leads Ralph to reveal that he's actually concerned about his girlfriend and doing a good job as a father. Then, Dan asks Ralph if he's decided on a name for his baby, and he informs him that he plans on naming him Jason if he's a boy or Nancy if she's a girl. Later on, Ralph is seen driving a kid to his destination when the boy picks up a phone call from his mother. He begs his mom not to allow him to go to his friend's place because he might pee his pants.
We've all been there, big guy.
But his mom doesn't feel comfortable letting him stay home alone because she's going on a trip. After the call ends, Ralph tells the boy to stop talking to his mom and other women in that way because it'll mess him up. He also informs him that they're supposed to come off as strong and stoic. After Ralph drops the boy off at home, he realizes that the little chap had forgotten his phone, but rather than call him back, he takes it to a gadget store and sells it.
That's a new low even for you.
Ralph takes the money home to Sal, who asks him how he'd gotten that much money in the first place. Like, did you drive some people from Asia to Europe to make that much money within one day? Ralph dodges her questions, but he's eventually forced to admit that he had sold the phone of a kid who forgot it in his car.
Ralphie!
What?
You stole some kid's phone?
He further reveals that it was actually for the kid's good because if he'd gotten his phone back, he might be tempted not to go to his friend's place just because he was feeling scared and misguided. However, Sal doesn't think his excuse is good enough. Ralph tries to turn the table on Sal while reminding her that she's the one complaining about having to take some expensive tests, but Sal tells him she wants them to build the image of a happy, ordinary little family for their kid, not one where he's stealing stuff from his passengers. This angers Ralphie, who turns to Dad Dan and his self-help group for help. The meeting takes on a more occult approach this time, as the men chant in an almost religious way about taking back their masculinity. Dad Dan then places some incense before Ralph and the other men before asking Ralph to confess the real reason why he'd come. Ralph reveals that he'd come because of the issues with his girlfriend and his job, and how no one seemed to respect him. Dad Dan asks Ralph to let loose and allow all the emotions within him to burst forth. Ralph is overtaken with anger as he recalls all the time that Sal scolded him for doing something wrong. The men place their hands over him as he shivers before lashing out and kicking at everyone. After the entrance ceremony ends, Jason walks up to Ralph and tells him that he was pretty intense with his acting back there. But Jason says nothing because he'd actually been letting out his real emotions. Just then, another one of the guys joins him and asks how Ralph plans on breaking the news to his family. News? What news? Ralph asks. Well, it turns out that one of the requirements for joining the organization includes divorcing your female partner or leaving her without giving her any prior notice.
It's all red pill, baby.
Ralph and Jason are stunned to say the least, but they decide to go along with it. Later that day, while Ralph works a late shift, he gets a call from Sal but ignores it. Ralph then heads over to the gym to punch some punching bags before heading towards the locker room. There, Ahmet and some of his friends approach him with a dazzling smile. Ahmet asks if he came to the gym to make friends.
Hey, man. You come to make friends?
But Ralph returns the kind gesture by telling him to talk to him with some respect before picking a fight with Ahmet's friends. Some guys step in to break up the commotion, and Ralph stomps off to his late night shift, clearly fuming. In the car, a few guys hop in, and within seconds, they're arguing in the back seat like kids who can't decide on a bedtime story. Ralph, already on edge, pops some pills like they're breath mints, visibly annoyed that these clowns are treating him like the silent Uber driver. Frustration boils over, and he slams the gas pedal, weaving through traffic like he's auditioning for Fast and Furious, The Rage Edition. The passengers beg for mercy as they're tossed around like rag dolls, but Ralph, he's focused on the chaos. Later that night, Sal tries to cut through Ralph's hardened exterior. She opens up, telling him that despite their shady beginnings, she believes they can create a happy life for their baby. Ralph listens, actually listens for once, and you can almost see a flicker of hope in his eyes. The next day, Ralph hangs out with Dad Dan and another guy at the mall. In a rare moment of self-indulgence, Ralph spots a fancy Ralph Lauren shirt. It's overpriced, but the group hypes him up, and he reluctantly buys it. The guilt kicks in almost immediately, like he's just been caught raiding the cookie jar before dinner. As they're leaving, the group runs into the ex-wife of one of their other cult members, Brad. Now, this woman thought Brad had disappeared for good, maybe even dead, after he up and vanished during his battle with lung cancer. But there he is, alive, kicking, and conveniently forgetting how to use a phone. She goes ballistic. While Dad Dan hustles the group out of the scene, Brad decides to face the music. A blood-curdling scream pierces the mall air moments later, and Ralph freezes, as if her fury had somehow ricocheted into his brain. Cue Ralph's existential spiral. He starts ranting about his selfishness, how he just blew up baby supply money on a shirt he didn't need. With his conscience eating away at him, he dashes off to the gym. There, he hugs a random guy like they're long-lost brothers before sucker punching him for no apparent reason. Because, why not? Ralph's day only gets weirder. He catches Ahmet, a bodybuilder, flexing at the gym and later demands respect from the Dollar Tree version of Santa Claus, who strips on the sidewalk. Later, at home, he catches Sal working out. Instead of encouraging her, he struts over and switches off the TV, offering zero explanation. Sal, understandably annoyed, decides to approach this like a grown-up. She kisses Ralph to diffuse the tension, but instead of calming down, he erupts again. When she pleads with him to talk, he shoves her against the wall and spits out a mantra from his mysterious self-help group. Then comes the bombshell. He reveals he has some kind of catastrophic power to destroy everything.
There is a staggering beauty in me, okay? A cataclysmic power to create and annihilate.
What the fuck are you talking about? You want to fucking annihilate?
What is he talking about?
To top it off, he locks Sal in a room and storms out. Things escalate fast. Ralph moves in with his so-called family, who officially initiate him with a cultish branding ritual. They proclaim he's reborn as Son of Manodrome. Whatever that means. Is the family itself Manodrome, or is it just Dan playing leader of the pack? Either way, it's creepy. In the meantime, Ralph's trauma comes to light. We see a flashback of him leaving his girlfriend. He glances at his apartment, scowls at the Christmas tree, and envisions a chubby red-haired boy who looks like him as a child. Turns out, Ralphie's dad walked out on him during Christmas, leaving him to care for his mom. This abandonment scarred him deeply, fueling his obsession with the gym and his appearance. Too bad this revelation feels like an afterthought, shoehorned in when the story's already unraveling. Back in Cultland, the top G tries to play mentor, telling Ralphie, "Don't let that broken, sweet boy inside you down. You're strong now." Sweet, right? Ralphie's response? A straight-up punch to Dan's face, followed by another one for good measure, because nothing says gratitude like assault. Then, it's just a downhill spiral from there. Ralphie headbutts a concerned friend, speeds off in his car, smashes into a bunch of other vehicles, and finally parks to sleep in his wreckage. The next day, he's back at the gym, where he spots his old nemesis, Ahmet. But instead of the usual stink-eye exchange, Ralphie follows him to his construction site. Ahmet wanders into an abandoned building, and Ralphie trails behind like a shadow. Inside, something unexpected happens. They kiss, and the moment turns intimate. It's a rare glimpse of vulnerability from Ralph, suggesting layers of repression he's been hiding.
Yo, wait. It's okay. Yeah, just me. Yeah.
But just as quickly as this tenderness appears, it's shattered. Ralph pulls out a gun and shoots Ahmet in the stomach. Yep, you heard that right. Then he loots the man like he's playing Grand Theft Auto. Watch, coat, necklace, car, the whole shebang. Soon after, Ralph pawns the valuables, pockets the cash, and splurges on supplies for his family, as if this could somehow balance the scales of his chaotic existence. He then heads to the hospital, where Sal had just given birth to a mini Ralph. How on earth he knew exactly where Sal was, I have no idea. Sal catches his eye. She seems to have forgiven him. Sometime later, it's Christmas, and Ralph asks Sal to sing a Christmas song for their son, but she hesitates, visibly unhappy with their situation.
It's the worst, emptying out with a single word. There is a hollow in me.
Later, after Ralphie gets back home from buying some groceries, Sal is revealed to have abandoned her husband and child, leaving behind a note scrawled on a protein powder tub. "Forgive me." The choice of note location is oddly fitting. Sal knew exactly where Ralph's priorities were. It seems Sal had had enough and abandoned Ralphie, leaving him alone with the baby, just like his dad did to him. The next scene cuts to their apartment in utter chaos. Furniture turned over, the TV on the floor like it just got thrown out the window, and Ralphie lies there in the middle of it all. It's pretty clear a violent outburst has occurred, though we don't actually see it. Maybe the budget ran out, or maybe they just didn't feel like filming that part. Who knows? With nowhere else to turn, Ralphie takes the baby and heads back to the Manadrone family. Even though his last exit was a bit awkward, they welcome him back with open arms. Someone holds the bebe, while the rest of them prepare a Christmas meal for Ralphie, because nothing says holiday spirit like family reunions and strange cults. But of course, it's not all cozy vibes. The cops show up. Ralphie, who's clearly panicking now, pulls out a gun like it's a new Christmas ornament and demands Dan's help. Dan, being the father figure of the group, tries to calm him down. "We knew this was going to happen," he says, completely unfazed. But Ralphie's not having it. His brain's on fire, and he's not listening to anything or anyone. In a panic-fueled frenzy, Ralphie threatens everyone in the room, shouting at him to get down. He starts reciting the family's weird, cult-like leadership oath. The others join in, chanting with him, creating this strange, almost eerie atmosphere. It's like they all suddenly stepped into a bad version of The Sound of Music, but with guns. Just as things reach peak tension, there's a gunshot. The top G is dead, shot right in the face by Ralphie, one of his followers. Of course, things only spiral further down from there. Ralphie shoots a cop who enters the house, steals a car, and drives off like he's auditioning for the Fast and the Furious, the Deranged Driver Chronicles. After a while, he abandons the car and runs off into the forest because nothing says, "I'm in control," like running into a dark, spooky forest. Then Ralphie stumbles into some kind of facility. Maybe it's a mental institution or a retirement home, but who's really keeping track at this point? He's hungry, so he breaks in and starts scarfing down some bread. As he's getting his carb fix, a tall, kind man named Sachel appears and offers help. Ralphie, still on edge, pulls a gun on Sachel, because that's totally normal, right? But when he tries to the gun clicks. Turns out it's out of bullets. Classic alpha male move. Always forgetting the basics. Exhausted from everything, Ralphie eventually passes out. When he wakes up, he's in a bed wearing what looks like hospital pajamas, with Seychelle sitting nearby. Seychelle, being the storyteller, begins recounting a tale from his childhood. When he was 3 years old, he fell into icy water. As he struggled to stay afloat, he thought he was going to die. But right before he gave up, he saw his father jump in to save him. This story hits Ralphie hard. He's always longed for a father figure, someone to show him the love and guidance he never got. As Seychelle finishes the story, Ralphie lies down next to him, cradling into his arms like a child seeking comfort. Just as they share this quiet, rare moment of peace, sirens begin to wail in the distance. The cops are closing in. The movie ends with the cops' arrival, and while Ralphie's fate seems sealed, there's this glimmer of peace in the air, as if, for the first time, Ralphie may have found a sliver of solace.